I suffer from what you might refer to as reality rot, where you're so sick and tired of being sick and tired of existence that an internal self putrefaction begins to decay you from the inside in a very insidious manner that gets worse over time. Reality rot comes in three phases. Phase number one is chronic boredom. Now, most people, especially when they haven't been alive for very long and they're perhaps in their mid to early 20s and they've never felt true depression, they will actually mistake chronic boredom for depression. That's exactly what I did, and I considered it to be the worst thing ever. And it starts out with you get a kind of boredom that doesn't go away until you do something excitatory. So, for example, you could smoke weed, you could play video games, you could drink beer, you can have dates with women and have sex with them in a hotel room, and those types of activities will salvage your boredom. But it's not unless you're doing something that is extremely stimulating to distract you from your chronic boredom. That's the only how you can get relief. Okay, but then the chronic boredom gets progressively worse to the point where when you engage in drug, sex, and rock and roll, violent video games, smut films, etc., you find that you have that sensation of chronic boredom while you are engaging in the behaviors that once used to excite you and stimulate you, but no longer do, and you feel the chronic boredom even while you're doing that. So that's when you get to stage two of reality rot, which is what you might call major depressive disorder. Now, this is basically extreme boredom without the possibility of relief. So you feel extremely bored. And the anhedonia is the lack of pleasure. So nothing that you used to do to salvage your boredom works anymore. Even if it's something like, I used to like reading novels and walking my golden retriever in the park, and I used to like to go surfing on the beach. I would do these things because I felt so bored and restless all the time. But these things used to provide a modicum of relief, but never happiness, but they would at least relieve me. But you find that once the chronic boredom turns into major depressive disorder, um, you will be just as bored doing what you love. And then, therefore, you no longer love what you love. You want to love what you love, but you can't because the feeling of depression has completely taken over. And then it just gets to the point where whether you're um, at the shooting range firing at a target and that used to excite you, you at the shooting range firing at a target is just as boring as sitting in your bedroom staring at the TV screen. Or better yet, turn off the TV, because you watching your favorite show on Netflix is no more salient than just staring at the TV while it is off. So it gets to that point where the boredom is extreme and you find absolutely no relief from the boredom. And everything is just equally as boring. Whether it's watching your favorite sports team or staring at dry paint. You might as well just stare at the dry paint, because doing what you otherwise used to somewhat enjoy to salvage your boredom doesn't work anymore. I find that what we call boredom and depression are basically synonyms, but they're different severities of the same reality rot. So now we're going to go to the third aspect of reality rot, which is where I am at. And as you can tell, I've been making these videos where I have talked about my depression for years, but I'm starting to realize that reality rot is coming in phases, and each phase gets progressively worse. If there is a fourth phase, worse than the one I'm about to describe right now, that I've yet to experience this, but I imagine it would just be suicide itself, not to be melodramatic. The third phase of reality rot is what I refer to as cluster depression. So that is a composite disease where you have the extreme boredom that is unsalvageable, but you are so sick and tired of being sick and tired of existence due to this reality rot that over years of feeling chronically depressed, eventually it will be accompanied with it'll start out as a minor agitation that causes you to be irritable. Now, this is where you're at the point where when you were a depressive, people never knew that there was anything wrong with you because you were able to just pretend to be a human and pretend to be charismatic and smile, and people would think that you were good company, even though you felt dead on the inside. But when it comes to the third phase of reality rot, which is cluster depression, you start to have this severe depression, but there's negative emotions that are add-ons to be on top of it. I have been suffering with this form for about 4 months, and I haven't found any relief. And it's the same severe depression that we're all too familiar with, in conjunction with the add-on of other negative emotions on top of it. Mine is particularly hate-filled resentment that can be most easily described as a kind of agitation that is severe, that makes me very irritable, to the point where it is impossible when I am around people for them to not know that there is something wrong. I will try to be normal, but I find that it's impossible. I will try to smile, but I find it to be almost impossible. And people will say, "Hey Garrett, are you okay? Are you feeling all right?" And then I'll say, "Yeah, why? Oh, you look like you're a bit down in the dumps." It's like you go into a crowded setting and you're sitting at the table, and even though you're making eye contact with the people that are talking and you're maybe nodding your head, people will be like, "Hey, I think there's something wrong with Garrett. He's just not right," because the energy, I think it's energetic. It's not so much body language, although there could be something to do with that as well. I think it's the fact that it has gotten to the point where the depression has gotten so severe that the depression eventually gets aggravated with the fact that it is depressed. So then depression kind of grows a cancer that's attached to the depression itself, which we would call agitation. So it's two morbidities simultaneously. The first morbidity is major depression in conjunction with the cancer that is attached to it, which is agitation, that causes you to feel irritable. And the vibration that surrounds you when you're in this state is so low and so seething that it is actually impossible for the people around your energetic field not to notice it, and you're going to give people, quote, bad vibes. And this is going to make life even more difficult than just phase 2 reality rot, major depression. Because with major depression, like I said, you can pretend to be alive even though you're dead on the inside, and people will never know. But with this, you can pretend to be alive and you can make eye contact and you can make facial expressions, but your energy, because your depression has a carcinogenic growth attached to it, which is agitation, that never goes away. You feel those two things simultaneously with great intensity. And with that being said, that's when, if you are like myself and you went to Thanksgiving today, um, people kept asking me at random, even though I was smiling, laughing, and making eye contact, is there something wrong with you? Are you okay? And it's been a persistent thing for the past 4 months since it has elevated to the severity of phase 3, reality rot. And it feels as though that it comes with a permanence without the possibility of an erasure. Because even though the depression gets more and more severe to the point where the depression is so sick of itself and wants nothing more for its own sensation to end at once, but it can't, that's when depression starts to form its own emotion, which is agitation with the fact that it is depressed. And once you reach stage 3, that is where suicidality, not as something that you would actually do necessarily, but we're talking the word suicidality as a emotion as opposed to an activity. You are approaching that level of severity. It comes in phases, but I want you to understand that whether you are at phase 1, phase 2, or myself, phase 3, and I do believe, unfortunately, phase 4 would be the actual ending of the biology, your suffering is valid because all of it sucks bad and it ruins the quality of life, whether it's phase 1, 2, or 3. But I tell you that phase 3 is so much worse than phase 2 because with phase 2, I was able to be depressed, and even though drugs and alcohol didn't provide very much of a relief, even if at all, it was just depression. It was nothing else but that old familiar terrible feeling, but it was no add-on to that. But with phase 3, it's the exact same depression, but there is a infuriation that is quiet, a ferocity that is self-homicidal. That on the inside it says, I am so fucking sick and tired of being depressed that I just want it to end. And because nothing in this world can make it end, whether it's a substance or a person or an activity, then I think you know what to do because I am so fucking depressed. This is depression speaking. I am so fucking depressed that it's starting to even piss me off. And you gotta do something to make it stop, but there's nothing that can be done to make it stop, except for that one thing that cannot be mentioned, which you and I, if we're at this stage, we're disinclined to do, because we have this hope in our heart that maybe at some point I can be a happy, healthy, energetic adult and this will all just go away, or at least go into remission. Or we think it would make your friends and family and loved ones heartbroken And it would be such a shock. And there's all these things going through your head as to why you can't or shouldn't or what have you. Maybe people rely on you financially, etc. And that is essentially where I am at. Reality rot is the self-putrefaction of internal decay that gets progressively worse, but it's subtle and it's malicious because it takes years. For example, it took me about a decade to get to this point. But every phase of reality rot, you think it's the worst thing in the world. When you suffer from phase 1, you're like, make it stop. Holy shit, this is horrible. But at least you had excitatory, stimulating things that would provide temporary relief. But then stage 2, it's basically the same as stage 1, but it's more severe and there's no possibility of relief. But it's just the depression. But stage 3, on the other hand, it's the extreme depression without any possibility of relief in conjunction with extreme agitation. And I believe how this works is the depression, even though we hate it so much, it starts to get so tired of itself that it starts to develop its own protest. And its protest is, I am depressed. I hate the depression that I am. And I want this to end because even I, depression itself, am pissed off at the fact that I am depressed. And when we say, quote, I, depression, am pissed off that I am depressed, that is stage 3, which is the cancer that has grown on the depression because the depression has been wallowing in fermentating filth for so long that, like wine, it gets, instead of getting sweeter with time, unlike wine, it actually gets more putrid and toxic with time. And once it gets to that phase where it's like, hey, it's me. Hardcore depression. I'm sick of myself. And me existing as this vibration of pure negativity, it pisses me off. And it's that pissed offness that turns into a depression that is at the same time very aggravated with itself. So you're basically walking around with 2 exclusive emotions at all time once you're at this stage. And as you know, that is extreme depression and extreme aggravation because of the fact that you are depressed. And when you're at this stage, it's impossible to hide it. People are going to feel your energy and you're going to give them, quote, bad vibes. And they're either going to say that you're killing the vibe and you need to leave, or they will inquire and ask, what is the fucking matter with you? No matter how hard you try to give a performance of normality, it will be impossible for you to be successful once you are at this point. And that is the point where I am at.